For more on SpaceX, Brett Linzey, Mizuho Managing Director and Head of Industrial Sector Research, joins us. Recently initiated on SpaceX, has an outperform rating with the stock a price target of $200 per share. You know, Brett, I appreciate that there's a clear thesis at the core of your coverage of SpaceX, right? But I wanted to get to the idea that I'm sat here at this desk during the Starship attempt last week. And it was amazing to see how quickly, in after-hours trading, the stock dropped, right, 4% in the moment, because the test was aborted right at the final moments. All of these future business lines on the AI side, Neo Cloud side, Starlink, orbital data center, they're all predicated on Starship not just working, but being rapidly reusable. So could we just start there and sort of your response to tracking the cadence of Starship's development?
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for having me on. So yeah, this was flight 13, recent delay. Was some minor technical issues that were identified pre-launch. And I remind you, this is version 3, so it is a bigger, more powerful vehicle. They've debuted it about 2 months ago. The automatic abort at ignition was really the function of 4 of the 33 Raptor engines on the booster didn't immediately light up. And the onboard system caught it. It stood the vehicle down before the liftoff. And that's a safety system really doing what it's supposed to do. Musk in the team, they've identified the root cause within a few hours. 2 engines are being swapped out. They're already back on the pad. They're targeting, as you mentioned, this Thursday for a relaunch. That's about a week of turnaround on a pretty complex rocket. I think these development programs that you've seen historically at this scale, from a diagnose and fix cycle, that's relatively quick versus anything that's structurally wrong with the ship.
So Brett, here's the thing. I'm reading your research. Investment thesis: SpaceX is not a rocket company. We're just talking about rockets. Explain your thesis.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I would say that the enabler of the Starlink opportunity and the connectivity opportunity longer term is going to be dependent on the success and the reusability cadence of Starship. Falcon 9 is the current vehicle they use this year. They've got really good visibility on some of the payload to orbit, densifying the constellation on for Starlink on the actual Falcon 9. But we do think long term it will hinge upon the success of Starship. Right now they do have a very big running start relative to the other competitive set. About 85% of all mass to orbit was enabled by SpaceX over the last 3 years. And operational cadence will be important. These launches this year will be important, and they're making inroads, and they're we'll see on Thursday. But yeah, that will be a big enabler and gating factor for the success over the next couple of years.
Within your $200 price target, how do you sort of break out each business line within that price target?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So when we look at the next 3-year roadmap, we're really taking a large discount relative to the AI platform. So near term, a lot of our price target is going to hinge upon the success of Starlink. And then some of what they're doing on space with the government contracts and some of the enterprise, most recently some of the contracts with the airlines. We do think there is pretty good line of sight here in the near term, and we anchored our valuation on 2029 and actually took a pretty large haircut relative to what the internal plan is. And we're thinking that connectivity is more optionality around the stock and underwriting it on some of the near-term fundamentals versus the long upshot on orbital data center in 2030 and beyond.
Brett, do you model at all for any key man risk with Elon Musk? How do you kind of factor that into how you value the company as much as anything?
Well, that's certainly a consideration, right? He's a visionary. He's very involved in the operations and really across every single segment and division within the organization. All that being said, there is a blueprint that's in place. I'd say the moats they've been able to develop, some of the secular strengths across the business and really what they have is ownership within the launch capabilities in the U.S. and across the globe. That is the key differentiator as we're thinking about some of the optionality with the other segments down the road. So yes, something always we consider, but he's built something from what was really a vision years ago, over decades ago, and it's a real company with real moats and defensibility in our view.